Hey guys, Joel's coming at you with another reasoning session where I challenge the status quo of the wisdom of the world and the church by diving deep into the ancient scriptures and applying them practically to situations in our present day. And today I'm going to be talking about the edifice of fat religion coming crashing down in the face of a new thing that Source is doing in our time.
Come now and let us reason together. Come now, we can talk it over.
But before I begin, I just gotta say, if you like these videos, give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more like content, because honestly, these messages are coming through daily. And Source is really inspiring me because Source is lining up those of us with ears to receive this message and hearts to put it into action. Even though we might not see each other and feel like we're alone on this journey, really, Source has an army that's rising up in this time. And that's what I want to get into in this story. We're literally a generation of Samuels just being raised up to anoint the kings, to anoint the Sauls and the Davids that will actually look in the face of old fat religion and prophesy the word of Yahweh against them, to single out those Sauls and those Davids and anoint them as king when old religion would never even consider them to lead the way forward. But yeah, talking about the story of Samuel, or Shmu'el in Hebrew, he was dedicated from before the womb. And the vow that his mother made with Yahweh when she dedicated him was that no razor would fall upon his head. And that kind of symbolizes the vow that I have with Source, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. But when Shmu'el was being trained by the priest, Eli, or Eli in the English, there was a lot of corruption going on in the priesthood at that time. And reading right from the text here, it says, "Now the sons of Eli were sons of Belial. They knew not Yahweh." And Belial literally embodies the opposite of Yahweh's justice, literally mocking that justice to Yahweh's face. And the priest's custom with the people was that when any man offered sacrifice, the priest's servant came, while the flesh was in seething, with a flesh hook of 3 teeth in his hand, and he struck it into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot. All that the flesh hook brought up the priest took for himself. So they did in Shiloh unto all the Israelites that came there. Also, before they burned the fat, the priest's servant came and said to the man that sacrificed, "Give flesh to roast for the priest, for he will not have sodden flesh of you, but raw. And if any man said unto him, Let them not fail to burn the fat presently," as fat was part of the sacrifice that only Yahweh received, and the priests were not even allowed to eat it, "and then take as much as your soul desires," then he would answer him, "Nay, but you shall give it me now, and if not, I will take it by force." Wherefore the sin of the young men was very great before Yahweh, for men abhorred the offering of Yahweh. So of course this refers to the corruption that, religious institutions get fat and drunk on their power, and they just sit and extort people for money and whatever else in our present day. Now Eli was very old, and heard all that his sons did unto all Israel, and how they lay with the women that assembled at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And this again alludes to sexual trafficking and other kinds of manipulation that goes on in these religious organizations. Won't get into that, but it's pretty dirty what's coming to the surface in our present time. So even though Eli rebuked them, they still continued in their sin, and he wasn't tough with them to make them stop, because honestly their dad had raised them in this way. Because the magnitude of this situation, man, it's not just the priesthood that's responsible. They're acting in service of Yahweh, so really they're representing this. And if the people don't want to make sacrifice, actually this priesthood is to blame for that. It's not Source that's unjust, it's not Source that's corrupt, but it's the priesthood that is, and is deterring people from a real relationship with Source. That's what we're looking at in our present day as well. So the warning comes down on Eli. "And there came a man of Elohim unto Eli, and said unto him, Thus says Yahweh, Did I plainly appear unto the house of your father when they were in Egypt in Pharaoh's house? And did I choose him out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to offer upon my altar, to burn incense, to wear an ephod before me? And did I give unto the house of your father all the offerings made by fire of the children of Israel? Wherefore kick you at my sacrifice and at my offering, which I have commanded in my habitation, and honor your sons above me, to make yourselves fat with the chiefest of all the offerings of Israel my people? And he goes on saying, Behold, the days come that I will cut off your arm and the arm of your father's house, that there shall not be an old man in your house. And this shall be a sign unto you, that shall come upon your 2 sons, on Hophni and Phinehas, and one day they shall die both of them. And I will raise me up a faithful priest that shall do according to that which is in my heart and in my mind, and I will build him a sure house, and he shall walk before my anointed forever. And so Yahweh already had Shmu'el lined up to take the place of this old, fat, stagnant religion. And right after this, the story follows when Shmu'el was going to bed one night. He heard the voice calling out to him, Shmu'el, Shmu'el. He got up thinking Eli was calling him, and he ran unto Eli and said, Here am I, for you called me. And he said, I called not, lie down again. And he went and lay down. And this happens again. He hears the voice and he runs to Eli, and Eli says, I didn't call you. But the 3rd time he arose and went to Eli and said, Here am I, for you called me. And Eli perceived that Yahweh had called the child. Therefore Eli said unto Shmu'el, Go lie down, and it shall be, if he call you, that you shall say, Speak, Yahweh, for your servant hears. So Shmu'el went and laid down in his place. And this was at a time when it says that the word of Yahweh was precious in those days. There was no open vision. So the people were going on their day to day, and they had no revelation of actual source speaking to them. They were in a dry time of revelation, and that kind of symbolizes the time that we've come out of as a society, and we're kind of waking up to the magnitude of visions and prophecies, and all these things are coming alive back into our society once again. And Yahweh came and stood and called as at other times, Shmu'el, Shmu'el. Then Shmu'el answered, Speak, for your servant hears. And Yahweh said to Shmu'el, Behold, I will do a thing in Israel, at which both the ears of everyone that hears it shall tingle. And that's what's going on now. Are you excited for what's coming? Because I know I sure am. Yahweh is doing a new thing, exposing old and fat religion, and really instituting a new way of doing things, carrying out this wave of the Spirit of Yahweh into the world at our present time. And Yahweh reveals to Shmu'el what was going to happen to Eli and his whole household. And Shmu'el lay unto the morning and opened the doors of the house of Yahweh, and Shmu'el feared to show Eli the vision. And Eli called Shmu'el and said, Shmu'el, my son. And he answered, Here am I. And he said, What is the thing that Yahweh has said unto you? I pray you, hide it not from me. Elohim do so to you, and more also, if you hide anything from me of all the things that he said unto you. And Shmu'el told him every whit, and hid nothing from him. And he, Eli, said, It is Yahweh. Let him do what seems him good. And when Shmu'el took the place of fat religion, it says Shmu'el grew, and Yahweh was with him, and did let none of his words fall to the ground. So when Yahweh's source literally brings someone up, that is the most powerful and sure backing that we have. But the time came that Israel had to go against the Philistine into battle. And while they faced a very big defeat, the elders said, You know what? Yahweh has been against us, so let's bring out the Ark of the Covenant to go before us. So they called for the ark, and the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, brought it out into the camp. And when the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh came into the camp, all Israel shouted with a great shout, so that the earth rang again. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, they said, What means the noise of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews? And they understood that the ark of Yahweh was come into the camp. And the Philistines were afraid, for they said, Elohim is come into the camp. And they said, Woe unto us, for there has not been such a thing heretofore. Woe unto us! Who shall deliver us out of the hand of these mighty Elohim? These are the Elohim that smote the Egyptians with all the plagues in the wilderness. But then they said, Be strong and quit yourselves like men, O Philistine, that you be not servants unto the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Quit yourselves like men and fight. And the Philistine fought, and Israel was smitten, and they fled every man into his tent, and there was a very great slaughter, for there fell of Israel 30,000 footmen. And the ark of Elohim was taken, and the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were slain. So here's the beginning of the fulfillment of corrupt religion falling. And there ran a man of Benjamin out of the army, and came to Shiloh the same day with his clothes rent and with earth upon his head. And when he came, lo, Eli sat upon a seat by the wayside watching, for his heart trembled for the ark of Elohim. And when the man came into the city and told it, all the city cried out. And when Eli heard the noise of the crying, he said, What means the noise of this tumult? And the man came in hastily and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were dim that he could not see. And the man said unto Eli, I am he that came out of the army, and I fled today out of the army. And he said, What is there done, my son? And the messenger answered and said, Israel is fled before the Philistine, and there hath been also a great slaughter among the people, and your 2 sons, also Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of Elohim is taken. And it came to pass, when he made mention of the ark of Elohim, that he fell from off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake, and he died, for he was an old man and heavy. Again, we're talking about old, fat religion that's grown corrupt with power and just stagnant, not willing to accept the truth that Source is speaking, not willing to change their actions when the rebuke actually hits their ears. But we have an interesting epilogue to this story where his daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, was with child, near to be delivered. And when she heard the tidings that the ark of Elohim was taken, and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed herself and travailed, for her pains came upon her. And about the time of her death, the women that stood by her said unto her, Fear not, for you have borne a son. But she answered not, neither did she regard it. And she named the child Ikavod, saying, The glory is departed from Israel, because the ark of Elohim was taken, and because of her father-in-law and her husband. So we see that this whole edifice of fat religion fell on its face. And the glory had departed. Literally, the kavod of Yahweh was no longer in that household. And man, that's a pretty serious name to be carrying around for the rest of your life. But that just goes to show that when Yahweh does something, he doesn't leave any stone unturned, and he completes the cycle completely. And he raised up Shmu'el in this place, because it says that Shmu'el grew, and Yahweh was with him, and did let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan even to Beersheba knew that Shmu'el was established to be a prophet of Yahweh. And Yahweh appeared again in Shiloh, for Yahweh revealed himself to Shmu'el in Shiloh by the word of Yahweh. Those visions, Source wasn't going to just give them to a corrupt priesthood. He had to have someone receptive and actually willing to implement those words and put them into action and actually speak the words to the people. A vessel that he could trust. And from there, he saw that Shmuel was willing to carry these out, and Shmuel started receiving these visions. So while before this time, there was no word coming through into people through visions and through other methods of oracular revelation, because really the priesthood wasn't deserving of it when they were so corrupt. There was no real movement of the power of Elohim in this organization. But when Shmuel stepped up as a willing vessel, not responsible to himself, but responsible and answers only to Yahweh. In another passage, when they come to Shmuel later and ask him to appoint a king, he says, Why do you want a king when Yahweh is in charge? And they say, No, we want to be like the other nations. We want a king. And Shmuel is vexed by this. And he goes before Yahweh and says, Look at what they're saying. But Yahweh says, Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. So Shmuel wasn't doing this as an ego trip. He was literally only answerable to Yahweh. And that is what Yahweh is doing. He's doing a new thing in this time when he's raising up people that are so tapped into Source that they don't care whatever accusations come against them. They know that Source has directed them to speak what they need to speak, to expose what they need to expose, and to do what they need to do, just as agents to bring this kingdom into reality and usher in this new kingdom of heaven into this earth plane at this time. And if we look later on, Shmuel was the one to anoint the kings Saul and David Hamelech, because you know what? Heli would have never anointed David, or David in the English, because even Shmuel had second thoughts. He was looking at him, he's like, this is the youngest of 8 brothers. The older ones actually look good, they're strong, they're leaders. Even Saul was a head and shoulders taller than everybody else, but David was a young kid and he was tending the sheep, because he looked at David's oldest brother Eliab and said, Surely Yahweh's anointed is before him. But Yahweh said unto Shmuel, Look not on his countenance or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For Yahweh sees not as man sees, for man looks on the outward appearance, but Yahweh looks on the heart. Is your heart in tune with Source? Because if it is, Source can literally use you as the Shmuel that will literally anoint the Davids of the present day to go forward and fight the battles and literally change this thing from the inside out. We're all doing our own individual pieces of the puzzle. Sometimes we think that we're the Davids and we're going to just obliterate everything when we tap into Source, but Source has it like a chessboard set up, all different pieces as agents in place for the kingdom of heaven to usher in the world that Source knows we're deserving of, that are talented talents that have been stilled in our hearts can actually manifest in time, because Source has lined this all up from the beginning anyway. We just got to be the willing vessels and really trust Source as Source opens the doors and lines people up on our path that just fit all these pieces of this bigger picture up into a clear picture that can finally be seen for the majesty that Source really embodies. So step up and tap in, ask Source to reveal these things to you personally, because Source really is a personality and can communicate with us on that really deep individual level in our hearts. Once we're sincere with that, Source can be sincere with us. So I love you guys. I'll check you in the next reasoning sesh. Joel signing out once again. Agape, Salaam, Namaste, Shalom.